At 12:30 a.m., silence covered the Russian countryside near Bojovo, just 120 miles from Moscow. That silence would soon be broken. News had already reached Igor Sekhin, Russia's powerful oil baron, and it was the kind of news that could shake even Putin's fury. Ukraine had launched a daring strike, and the target was Russia's prized possession, a $3 billion oil pipeline. This wasn't just another pipe running through the ground. It was the lifeline of Russia's war machine, pumping more than 1 million barrels of refined fuel every day. It kept tanks rolling, jets flying, and Moscow's war front alive. For Russia, it was priceless. For Ukraine, it was the perfect target, a single point of failure that, if destroyed, could throw the entire system into chaos. But this strike wasn't random. It was the result of weeks of planning. Ukraine's military intelligence had used satellite data to map every inch of the pipeline and pinpoint a weakness near Bojovo. The plan was bold: overwhelm Russia's defenses with distractions and then send in a hidden ace to finish the job. The first step was deception. 15 cheap wooden drones were launched into the night sky. Loud, simple, and expendable, their only purpose was to pull Russian attention away. At the same time, another wave of long-range drones headed straight for the massive Ryazan oil refinery. Russian defenses reacted instantly. Anti-aircraft cannons thundered, missiles streaked through the air, and within minutes, every drone was destroyed. On the surface, it looked like a flawless defense. But in truth, it was exactly what Ukraine wanted. Because hidden in a forest clearing, an unmarked delivery truck waited in silence. To any passerby, it looked ordinary, but inside were 2 advanced strike drones connected by fiber optic cables. This was Ukraine's secret weapon, a Trojan horse on wheels designed to slip past Russia's billion-dollar defenses. At 12:05 a.m., the first strike drone was launched. It hugged the treetops, flying low and fast through the fog. For a moment, it seemed unstoppable. But inside a Russian command bunker, suspicion had already taken hold. The earlier attacks had been destroyed too easily, and one officer believed they were only a feint. He ordered a small Orlan 10 reconnaissance drone into the air, and the hunt began. What followed was a tense game of cat and mouse. The Ukrainian drone used the forest and hills to mask its path, but the Orlan pursued relentlessly. When a missile locked on, the Ukrainian operator pulled a desperate maneuver to save the drone. It worked, but at a terrible cost. The violent turn snapped the fragile fiber optic cable, cutting the video feed. In seconds, the drone was lost, crashing into the countryside. Worse, the broken cable left behind a trail that could lead Russian forces straight to the truck. Inside that truck, tension exploded into action. The first drone was gone, but retreat wasn't an option. In a bold move, the second operator launched the backup drone while the truck was still moving. The drone wobbled violently at first, struggling to stabilize in midair. For a few heart-stopping moments, it looked like the mission would fail again. Then, against the odds, it steadied and locked onto its flight path. Now the entire mission, weeks of planning, millions at stake, rested on this one machine. The operator pushed the drone lower, just 50 feet above the ground, racing across fields and rivers with seconds to spare. In the Russian bunker, panic began to spread. The truth became clear: the pipeline was the real target. Orders were shouted and defenses scrambled, but it was already too late. Through his goggles, the Ukrainian operator finally saw it, the massive steel curve of the pipeline glowing faintly in the fog. He pressed forward. At exactly 12:25 a.m., the drone slammed into its target. The explosion that followed wasn't ordinary. The shaped charge pierced the pipeline, igniting high-pressure fuel in an instant. A firestorm erupted, sending a 300-foot fireball into the night sky. The shockwave tore across the land, ripping the pipeline open for hundreds of feet as flames raced down its length. Inside the fleeing truck, the operator ripped off his goggles just as the blast wave slammed against the vehicle. He didn't need to see the fireball, he could feel the victory. The damage was catastrophic. Repairs alone would cost over $50 million, but the real pain came from the fuel loss, worth more than $250 million. Gas stations across Moscow ran dry within days. On the southern front, Russian tanks and vehicles sat idle, starved of the fuel that kept them moving. With just $12,000 worth of drones and a single truck, Ukraine had crippled a $3 billion asset and slowed an entire army group. But the mission was more than a tactical win. It was a warning. Russia's billion-dollar air defenses, built to stop jets and missiles, had been fooled by cheap decoys and clever strategy. Ukraine proved that brains could beat brute force, and that even the strongest war machine could be brought to its knees with creativity and daring. One truck, one drone, and one very bad morning for Moscow.